positive reinforcement or reinforcement, we need to make sure that we have these key factors in mind at all times. Reinforcement needs to be personal, okay? Just like that chocolate was very reinforcing for Penny, we need to find things that are very or highly reinforcing for our students. So one way of doing this is through taking an inventory. Now, if you have young children or young students in your classroom, you might want to ask their parents, what are some of your child's favorite activities to do at home or engage in at home? What characters do they really like? What shows do they like? You know, just so you can get some information about your students prior to them coming into your class. Another way of identifying reinforcements for your students is just observing them through play. Now, of course, this is for young children, so I would observe my students during playtime. What are they spending their time doing during unstructured activities? During free play, what do they gravitate towards? What do they really like? What characters might they be wearing on their clothing? Or what kind of backpack do they have? Those are some things that we can pay attention to gain information about our students and what they really like. Of course, we can ask them. We can ask their parents. Those are just simple ways to identify reinforcers that are going to be meaningful and powerful for our students. The second key factor is reinforcement needs to be immediate. In order for our students to understand the way reinforcement works, and in order for them to increase the desired behavior, we need to make sure that we're providing them with immediate reinforcement. Whatever it is, if it's a high five, it's tickled, it's happening immediately after the desired task is performed, okay? The third key factor is that reinforcement needs to be frequent, okay? If the child is demonstrating this particular desired skill, then we need to make sure that we're providing them with frequent reinforcement. It's consistent, it's frequent, it's happening consistently, okay? Then the fourth key factor is reinforcement should be social. We want our students, oftentimes our students with autism have difficulty understanding social cues or accepting social praise or social cues. They may not like a lot of attention drawn to them, but we want to make sure that we're providing them with reinforcement that is social, because we want them to understand what it is that they're doing that we are praising, okay? And lastly, we need to make sure that reinforcement is earned. So if a child is not participating or demonstrating that particular desired outcome or skill, then they need to understand they're not going to be reinforced. Okay, so if we're working on body parts and the child is pointing to their nose and they do this, when we ask them to point to their nose and they point to their ear, guess what? We're not going to reinforce that because that is not the desired skill. We're asking them to point to their nose, and they need to point to their nose in order to be reinforced, okay? So they need to learn that the reinforcement is aligned with the correct or desired skill. Now, the token economy system is something that many of us are familiar with, and we have used it in our classrooms before. Maybe you haven't used it in your classroom, haven't needed to use it in your classroom. But a token economy, just as any type of reinforcement, is very powerful. Now, this is a particular system in place that really targets a desired outcome, okay? So, say we're working on identifying body parts, and this is a particular skill that is difficult for the student that we're working with. Well, we might use a token economy system when we are working on this particular skill with the student, okay? So we usually begin this by asking the child or presenting the child with a menu of options that they can select from. These are all reinforcers that we have come to know are reinforcing, highly rewarding for our students. So say, for instance, this particular student's working on identifying body parts, is highly motivated by going outside and blowing bubbles with the teacher. Well, they might choose that they want to work for bubbles. So guess what? That visual of working for bubbles is going to be right here as a reminder for that student that they are working for those bubbles, and they're going to earn all 5 stars in order to earn the bubbles. Okay, so these tokens can be stickers, they can be stamps, they can be actual coins or tokens that we use. It's something that is meaningful for the student. So for a child in preschool, I might use a simple token board just like this. Their little bubbles icon would go here, and as the child points appropriately to their body parts that they are identifying, I might reinforce them, reinforce them, reinforce them along the way. Now, after they earn those 5 tokens, and I'm providing them with not only just a token, but specific praise like, wow, awesome job pointing to your nose, high five, tickled, I really like the way you're pointing to your stomach, you know, they're understanding. Miss Natalie is proud of me. She likes the way that I'm pointing to my body part. So guess what? Tomorrow, I'm going to do it again because I know in the end, she's going to follow through and I'm going to have a break with bubbles. So I'm going to increase the behavior by utilizing not only social praise, but a token economy. Okay? Now, when we talk about using a token board, we need to make sure we are very familiar with how it works. Okay, so first of all, using a token economy system is something that is super powerful, but we need to make sure that we're using it appropriately. Okay, now in doing so, we need to make sure that ourselves, our instructional staff in our classroom, or even the parents at home if they're using it. We want to make sure that everybody's properly trained on how to use the token system, okay? We don't want to just give it to anybody and say, here, you know, because we need to make sure that it's consistent. We need to make sure that it's frequent. We need to make sure all of those things are being accounted for when implementing a token economy system. Now, again, we go back to those reinforcers and we have to think, are these reinforcers very powerful? Now, our students, we have them for a year. Sometimes we have them for a couple of years, depending on what grade you teach. I myself teach my students for 3 years. So guess what? Their reinforcers are going to change because when they begin with me as 3-year-olds, their interests may change over time, right? Just as us as adults, our interests change, so do our students. So we need to make sure that whatever reinforcers we are providing are highly meaningful and engaging for our students to ensure the likelihood of those desired behaviors or skills increase, all right? And then lastly, we need to make sure that our tokens are being provided consistently in a fair way so that our students understand the token board, how it is implemented, and they're aware that it's consistent and it holds power to them. We want to make sure that they buy into the use of a token board, because guess what? If we use a token board and we're not consistent and the students are not highly engaged by what it is that we're providing them, they're not going to want to do whatever it is that we're asking them, even if it's something easy, like pointing to their nose or, you know, greeting a peer. If it's not something highly reinforcing to them, it's not going to be meaningful. If it's not something consistently provided to them, then it will not be consistent, okay? Now, I would like everybody to create a token board. So, on your email, you will see a downloadable token board with a menu of reinforcers that you can choose from. Now, I want you to think of a particular student in your classroom that could benefit from the use of a token board. Okay. After you identify that particular student, I want you to think of at least 6 items that would be highly reinforcing for the student. Okay. Now, I want you to pick those 6 items that will be the most reinforcing, and we're going to prepare a token board by cutting, laminating, adding, adding some